You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Now, Vince, to his credit, the number one, Vince has never actually been a wrestler in terms of, he's been in a few matches, but he's never been a wrestler. He's never worked like that. So he doesn't really know. What he knows is marketing. I mean, he's a marketing genius. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it weren't, and I'll be honest with you, wrestling wouldn't exist. I wouldn't say that it wouldn't exist, but in today's world with social media and, the 300 channels to choose from on television, I guarantee you that regionally telecast wrestling shows they just wouldn't have survived. And so, but I was there for a year and a half behind the scenes trying to help them, and I see the frustration. I think that Vince sees that, the vehicle by which we all learned doesn't really exist anymore because there's no farm team. There's not 13 or 14 territories out there that you can go to and wrestle every night and in front of a live crowd. Now the school's doing a pretty good job. It's doing actually an excellent job, but that's just one place, so you're getting a lot of guys in there and they don't really know wrestling. That's why, most of the guys that wrestle today, they sit down and they map out their match, the whole thing, and that's just, to me, that's not wrestling. I never did that. The only thing I knew when I got in the ring is exactly how it was going to end. Now, I might have had an idea how I was going to start it based on what the story was, but that was it. Everything else was, I learned how to call it on the fly, so to speak. And that's a real art of the business, and it's a dying art.
I guess my curiosity, Ted, the reason I asked that question was your old running mate IRS. It's, Mike Rotundo's got a couple sons wrestling in the WWE. I didn't know if you had any thoughts or comments on Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas, and if you've got to see their work and what you thought about it.
I think, Bray Wyatt, I think, is one of the best characters they've got. I just, and I told him and I told his dad, I said, you got to be proud. The guy's really got it. He's good. He's great on the mic. He's very believable, and that's it. It's like, when I would talk to guys, I go, here it is. You think, shoot. In other words, what would I do if this were real? How would I respond if this were a real match or a real fight? That's the way you think, and then work, make it as believable as you possibly can. And I think Bray, as that character Bray Wyatt, he does a phenomenal job, and he's a good worker. He's a good worker in that he knows how to work his gimmick. And it's kind of like a lot of people used to say, well, Hogan was not a great wrestler, like technical wrestler. Hogan knew how to work his gimmick. The best match that I ever saw the Ultimate Warrior have wasn't with me. It was with Hogan. The match that Hogan had with him the night that he put him over for the title at WrestleMania 6 was the best match I ever saw him have. And again, that's because Hogan does know how to work. He knows how to work his gimmick. He knew how to work the big man thing. It's just like Big Show. First time I saw Big Show throw a drop kick, I went over and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Why did you throw up a drop kick?" Because I can. I said, "I don't care whether you can or you can't." I said, "Did you ever see Andre leave his feet like that?" No. Well, there's a good reason he didn't. You're a big guy. You don't need that. And so you got to learn how to work your gimmick. And anyway, today's guys, it's not their fault. There's a lot of good talent. There's a lot of guys that I see that are very talented. And you know what? And I think maybe over time, it's just like John Cena. John Cena, when he first started getting his push, I was kind of like, are you serious? This is the number one guy? But as John has a very unorthodox style, no doubt. But he has gotten better over the years. Why has he gotten better? Because he's had that much more time to go out there in front of a live crowd and hone his skills. So anyway, that's my story.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show, and we have the pleasure of talking to the $1 million man himself, Ted DiBiase. And Ted, we play by Freebird rules here, so I'm making the tag in to Zane Paisley. Zane, what you got, $1 million man?
Well, once again, Ted, thank you so much for coming on this evening. I just had a couple quick questions for you. The first thing I wanted to ask you about was, Are you familiar with Legends House, the show on the WWE Network?
The network, yeah.
If you were to be on a Legends House show, who would be some of your favorite people to be stuck in a house with for a few months?
Oh wow, man! I don't know. I don't know. I mean, just because they were, I would like to, guys that were my buddies, like Duggan. Of course, Duggan's done the thing, but Duggan and and Jake Roberts, the new Jake Roberts. I don't know if I'd want to be with the old Jake. Those two guys for sure, and probably my partner, Rotunda, and I don't know. I haven't really thought about it.
Okay. All right. And one other quick question for you. I was at a show that you were at in Fort Wayne a couple years ago, Heroes and Legends, and it was a lot of such a good time, and you were so cordial to all the fans, and Mike Jones, who our listeners will know as Virgil, was also there. What's your relationship with him like these days?
Well, Mike Jones is he's a decent guy. I never had any trouble with Mike. I mean, when we were traveling, he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't do drugs. He was always on time, and he listened. When we, if Mike could have really developed into a good wrestler, we could have had an unbelievable run. He just, he just not, that's why he was who he was, and because, that was the best role we could give the guy, is to be that guy, and he had that look, and, he had those moments, but outside of that, he just, and I've seen some of the stuff, the website, Lonely Virgil, and I just hear stories. Now, we have done autograph signings together from time to time, but, he was starting to, I would hear about it. Somebody would say, well, you were advertised for a show, and this was several years ago before I ever actually started going to Comic-Cons. Well, you were advertised for a show, and you weren't there. I said, what show? And I said, nobody ever told me about it. Well, apparently Virgil would call him and say, would you like to book us? And then a couple of weeks before the show, he'd call him back and say, well, Ted's not going to be able to make it, but I'll still be there. So you can't do that very many times till people start telling you don't come. So, I think that he has kind of, he's hurt himself in that regard. But, and on a personal level, I got along with him fine. He just, he's just, the nicest way to say it, he's not the sharpest, nail in the box, so to speak.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. I'm gonna tag in the Morning Star, Will Huckabee.
Mr. DiBiase, how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'd like to go to the back, to the beginning of your career stuff, because you had the honor and the opportunity to train with the legendary Funk Fam, and your father and stuff, Iron Mike DiBiase. How hard was your training back in the 70s, 60s, back in those days? And what was a typical day of training like for you?
Well, see, back when I when I broke into business, the training wasn't like there was no school. I mean, the training was, one, you're an athlete, and you had to. I mean, I grew up in the business, so I had it a little easier than some, but it's like serving an apprenticeship. They would take you, say, okay, we're going to take you down to a ring, wherever the ring's at, somewhere where there's maybe a permanent ring set up, and they basically show you the basic fundamentals, how to hit the ropes and how to just fall from your feet. The bump we take the most is from our feet to our back. And so you learn the basics, and then they throw you out there. They put you in, some little podunk town, and you're the first match on the card. But the guy in the ring with you is, probably a 8 or 10 year veteran. And very slowly, night by night, you learn your trade. So it wasn't like, you weren't going to a training facility where, they were trying to make you puke and do all that. Now, that's come along since then. But, those that's done to today, I believe, to find out if do you really want to do this? In other words, the old timers made you respect the business too. The old time way was like when you were a young guy, you go in the dressing room, you didn't speak really unless you were spoken to. I mean, it was like, again, when you're a young guy like that and you're just breaking in, you're on the opening match, second match, it's like, I can still remember the first time. I think Grizzly Smith came up to me one day and he said, Ted, what do you use for a finish? I said, I don't have one. He says, what? I said, I've never won a match. So, I didn't have a finish, and you learn that way, and you respect the yes sir, no sir, and when you would get together, when you would back then when it was all territories and cars, you would ride with somebody. I remember one guy was a very good friend of my dad's, and his name was Art Nelson. And if Art said, I'm going to pick you up at a certain place at 2:00, brother, if you weren't there at 2:00, you were left behind. I mean, it was always smarter to wait to be there maybe 5 minutes early. I mean, that's old school, and it's like, you are made to respect the business. The stuff about, the strenuous training regimes, maybe, yeah, I mean, there were times now, when I'd go to Japan, I'd do a lot of Hindu squats and, in Japan we wouldn't work out at a gym, we'd work out in our hotel. We'd take a deck of cards and we'd, throw the card over and if the card was a 3, you'd do 3 push-ups, 3 setups, and 3 Hindu squats. And if it was a 10, you did 10. If it was a face card, you did 10. Well, once you go through the whole deck, you've done 1,000. And it's a pretty strenuous workout. So, that was the way we worked out back then. There weren't schools. There really, when I broke into business, I didn't know what a wrestling school was. You came into the business because somebody took a liking to you, and you showed that respect, and there was the ribs and things, just like, anybody breaking in, you're the young guy in the car, so you sit in the back seat and you pop the tops and hand everybody their beer. And you talk when you're spoken to. That's old school. That's the way it was back then.